celebrating 40 seasons on the air. Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, we're not going undercover, but we are talking cover crops. Hear about the research experts are conducting to keep the crops in your fields thriving.
What's the dirtiest room in your house? It may not be what you think. We'll tell you what it is and what you can do to stay clean.
One way to show off your green thumb is to spruce things up with different colors. Find out about a collection of plants sure to give you yellow fever.
And we'll talk to a horseback riding expert who suffered a traumatic riding injury, but it hasn't changed her love of horses. Now she's sharing her story in the hopes of helping others. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Troy Moling. Thanks for joining us today here on Farm Week. Leighton, spring is getting close. I think we all know what that means.
That's right, many farmers are thinking about and starting planting.
That's true, and cover crops are one thing that really don't get a lot of press, but they're really crucial to a healthy field, and that's leading off our show today.
That's right, increasing crop yield while decreasing input cost is the goal of most row crop producers. And due to fertilizer prices, as well as consumer interest in naturally grown food sources, an old farming technique is resurfacing. At a recent field day, participants learned about the benefits of planting cover crops. Farm Week's Amy Myers reports from Ripley, Mississippi.
Before synthetic fertilizers existed, cover crops were planted between each row crop season. Cover crops are not meant to be harvested, but to create a healthy environment before planting the next row crop, like corn, cotton, or soybeans.
It's holding nutrients on site, and it's also producing a significant amount of biomass, and biomass is the precursor to building soil organic matter. Soil organic matter is great for allowing the soil to hold more water. It's good for microbial populations, and it's been linked to increased yields in cash crops or decreased input costs, and that's why producers are implementing it out here. Cover crops allows you sometimes to lower your input costs, and in some cases increase your yield, which is what the producer here saw this last year in his cotton crop.
The Cover Crops Field Day held at Graves Farm also educated visitors about Mississippi State University Extension's research on how crops like cereal rye and crimson clover affect water quality.
We're monitoring at the edge of the field and the water quality that's coming off the field. They prevent erosion because of the structure they create with the soil. And so the soil forms around those root systems and is held intact, and then it's less likely that it will just run off, because it's held intact by the root systems. So for the water quality, it's very important in the way we see reduced sediment in the water, which, you know, those are the farmers' topsoils that they don't want to lose because you can't grow those back.
For more information about planting cover crops or research information, contact your local MSU Extension or NRCS office. From Ripley, Mississippi, I'm Amy Myers reporting.
Are you looking for signs for the end of winter? Well, in this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman tells us to look for splashes of yellow, oftentimes the first color of spring.
Many gardeners consider green to be the color of spring, but this year, yellow is the first color popping. Daffodil blooms are for many gardeners the first visible signs of spring. These vigorous plants thrive joyously in sunny, well-drained places and are a mainstay of the spring garden. Because they are long-lived bulbs, daffodils make for a glorious landscape legacy. In Mississippi, the yellow flowers are a more traditional-looking daffodil, but there are many other selections. Dutch Master are early spring bloomers that display the bold yellow flowers that makes a striking planting. Fortissimo flaunts buttercup yellow petals offset by dramatic dark orange cups. This selection will add instant sunshine to your landscape and armloads of brilliant blooms from your cutting garden. Ice Follies display delightful early spring blooms with shallow yellow cups and crisp white petals. I think they look like a sunny side up egg. Paper whites bloom in clusters of small white flowers. These have a fragrance that reminds me of gardens on warm sunny days. Our other early yellow bloomer is Forsythia, which may be one of the most beautiful flowering shrubs. Forsythia are hardy and long-lived deciduous shrubs that thrive on neglect. I love those yellow flowers lining up and down the naked arching stems. These plants are not fussy about where they're planted as long as the soil is well drained. The color yellow is certainly announcing that spring has arrived. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and I'll see you next time on Southern Gardening.
Do you find your kitchen sometimes looking more like it's been hit by a tornado? With more activities come more germs. In this week's episode of The Food Factor, Mississippi State University Extension's Natasha Haynes shows us how to clean and sanitize.
Okay, JoJo, what's the dirtiest, germiest place in the home?
Easy, toilet.
No.
Trash can?
No, you're not gonna like this. It's the kitchen. Kitchens are a perfect breeding ground for germs. Consider the wet dish rags, dirty dishes with decaying food, countertops contaminated by raw meat, and not to mention, kitchens tend to be a high traffic area for the entire family. The solution is to sanitize everything. Clean with a bleach-based disinfectant several times a week to kill any lingering germs and bacteria. Store-bought varieties such as these will work perfectly. Or save some money and create your own germ-busting mix. To make a homemade sanitizer, add 1 teaspoon of chlorine bleach to 1 quart of water in a spray bottle. Spray the solution on your countertop, then let it stand for a few minutes and air dry. And if you're in a hurry, just dry off the surface with a clean paper towel. Clean and sanitized surfaces and utensils will keep your family and your food safe. It's time to make healthy food a factor in your life.
And here's a useful tip for you, late. Natasha says one trick you can do to remove baked on food from your pots and your pans. So soak a dryer sheet in warm water overnight inside that pot or pan, and that'll do the trick for cleaning up that kitchen. How about that?
Who knew?
I know, who knew? Extending knowledge, changing lives. That's what we do here. You're going to be changing some lives with this market report coming up, though, aren't you?
That's right. A major story for poultry just across the state line to the north. Sunday, the 5th, the USDA confirmed a case of avian influenza in southeast Tennessee. Also ahead in the markets this week, we look at whether the pre-report on feed gases are right or wrong. The potential for a big South American crop weighs on the soybean market. And how realistic is 80-cent cotton? Stay with us to hear what was said at the recent Farm and Gin show in Memphis. It is here and it is close. Over 30 chicken farms in southeast Tennessee within a 6-mile radius of a confirmed case of avian influenza are now under quarantine. The discovery was announced Sunday, March 5th by the U.S. Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. At the particular farm with the bird flu, all 74,000 chickens at that operation have now been culled. The farm was growing the birds for Tyson Foods. In response to that discovery, Hong Kong, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and Singapore have all banned poultry imported from the state of Tennessee. So what will that mean to competing meats such as beef, or will it not have any market impact? I asked Extension Livestock Specialist Josh Maples. Will the discovery of bird flu in Tennessee likely impact cattle prices?
I think it's too early to tell about the impact it's going to have on other markets. Leighton, right now the big question is what's going to happen in the poultry market itself. So that's something that a lot of people are watching. It's still a very fluid situation. We're still learning more about the avian influenza case in Lincoln County, Tennessee, learning more about what happened there. So I think right now what we're watching is how it's going to affect the poultry market itself and consumer demand for that. So I know South Korea came out and banned imports from basically our exports to them. So just to see how our trading partners react to this is going to be interesting, but we're going to get that sorted out before we figure out what kind of impact it might have on cattle prices.
Well, moving to the most recent cattle on feed report, were the numbers in that pretty much what was expected?
They were, yep. So this report I would call generally neutral as far as its impact on markets. It was very well anticipated. Pre-report estimates were very much in line with what the report actually came out with. So I think this report was one that analysts were kind of looking for as far as the numbers that we actually got. So I don't think there were any big surprises, and I don't think there was really anything in there that had a huge impact on the markets.
So how many cattle were placed in feedlots? Let's go there first.
Sure. So they're just under 2 million head were placed into feedlots or that were on feed February 1st placed. So that was up about 11% over the same time period in 2016. One of the interesting things about placements this time is this report was the first one that included the larger weight classes. So it gives you a placements total, and then it also breaks it out by weights. And so we've been asking for additional weight classes. Beforehand, it was 800 pounds or above was the heaviest weight class. They've added an 800 to 900, 900 to 1,000, and 1,000 plus. So moving forward, we'll be able to get better estimates about, how heavy the cattle going into feedlots are, and this will allow us to predict, when those cattle might be ready for marketing later.
Well, time now for our trivia quiz on Farm Week. Today's question is about a product made from a row crop. And here it is. What country is the largest exporter of soy meal? Is the answer China, Brazil, Argentina, or the United States? Stay with us because that answer is coming up right here on Farm Week.
It's time now for a quick break, but don't go anywhere. Still ahead, Leighton will tell you what rule is being repealed by President Trump. It's something that's making corn growers perk up their ears. And our feature segment today is all about horses and what you can do to stay safe while riding. You'll meet one experienced rider who suffered a terrible injury. Now she's sharing her story to help and inspire others. You won't want to miss it.
I've taken a lot of hits on the football field, but nothing has ever hit me as hard as cancer. I'm Dak Prescott, and my mom died from colon cancer in 2013. I live every day thinking about the way she hurt. So be there for the ones you love and talk to your doctor about getting screened for colon cancer.
Now it's the time when we highlight some exciting things happening within the state of Mississippi. Whether they're fried in green or part of marinara sauce or sliced up on a sandwich, everyone loves a good tomato, and that's the topic of this week's Farm Week Focus.
Get the BLTs ready. This week we're heading to the Eagle Ridge Conference Center in Raymond for the 27th Annual Mississippi Greenhouse Tomato Short Course. The event teaches both production and business aspects of growing greenhouse tomatoes. Exhibitors from across the country were on hand to display and demonstrate their products. Experts with Mississippi State University Extension and the Mississippi Agricultural and Forestry Experiment Station were there to present the latest information on topics like how to build a greenhouse, marketing strategies for selling your crop, diagnosing plant problems, and much more. Participants had fun touring a local greenhouse that produces and sells tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce. This time, you can eat the merchandise. If you have an event to tell us about, let us know, and you could see it on our next Farm Week Focus.
The Obama administration's controversial Waters of the U.S. rule is being repealed by President Trump. The National Corn Growers Association calls the action a reduction in regulatory burdens for farmers. Since it was first issued by the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the rule had been challenged in court by more than 30 different states. Well, we record this edition just ahead of the March 9th World Ag Supply and Demand Report. That document is expected to increase the size of Brazil's soybean crop. Meanwhile, trader Sue Martin says she's keeping an eye on another South American country, Argentina. Sue says potential adversity there could bring opportunity this way.
Argentina is they're the world's largest exporter of soy meal and soy oil, very leading in soy oil. And if they continue or something turns on them weather-wise, because there's still plenty of time on them, all of a sudden we could see a downdraft yet again, and then all of a sudden it sends less meal to go out the door. They come to the U.S.
At the recent Mid-South Farm and Gin show in Memphis, cotton trader Joe Nicosia proclaimed that cotton is recovering. Delta Farm Press reports Nicosia says prices could hit 80 cents a pound within 2 years. As for the present situation in cotton, analyst O.A. Cleveland is advising growers to be at least 75% priced on old crop by now, while pricing on new crop cotton should be at the 50% level at this time. Well, as for the wheat market here in March, there is optimism as well. Analyst Mark Gold sees better demand creating stronger prices for wheat as 2017 moves along.
Overall, I look at this wheat market as a market that's got some upside potential. You cannot put less and less acres in the ground with demand still picking up as it's been over the last several weeks, and expect that prices are going to stay toward these, relatively historic lows. We're not talking about $2 wheat from 15 years ago, but over in the last 5 years. So does the wheat have a chance here? I believe it does.
Back to the trivia quiz now to wrap things up here in the markets. What country is big in soy meal? Let's find out. And the answer is C, Argentina. That country is the world's largest exporter of soy meal.
Think about your favorite memory involving a horse. Even if you're not a rider, you likely have at least one thought that your mind returns to. Few animals can evoke the nostalgia of childhood mixed with the sleekness and grace that a horse can bring. It's an animal that demands your time and respect, but in turn is biologically wired to follow your lead. But no matter the bond between horse and rider, accidents and injuries can happen. In our feature story today, you'll meet a woman who, despite years of riding, was reminded of that lesson the hard way. Now she's sharing her story with the hope that others will learn from her mistakes and be inspired to saddle up safely and with confidence.
I think people are actually born with the love of horses. There's so much you can learn from them and develop skills of your own, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually through them.
It's a feeling like no other. The freedom, the power, the exhilaration that comes from two working together as one.
It's like learning to communicate with someone that's a lot like yourself. There's a unique bond that you develop with the horse because of their massive size.
Mary Shannon is a riding instructor whose history with horses spans half a century. And this past February, she almost lost that unique bond forever.
So it is kind of ironic that I've been riding as much as I have, and I'm an advanced level path instructor. And a Welsh pony bucked me off and broke my back. Good boy. Back.
What began as a quick outing with a rescue horse ended with a devastating injury and weeks of recovery.
It was almost like a psychotic episode, and he did a lunging leap where they jump up in the air and buck, and of course I wasn't prepared for that at all, and so I did come off of him and fell on my back, directly on my back, but I was in excruciating pain and I knew I was hurt. They did surgery. It was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th vertebra, And the fourth one was cracked, and the third and the fifth were displaced. And then I was in the hospital for 15 days, but I couldn't walk for a while. It was kind of scary. It's very humbling. And of course, we always know things can happen so quick and change your life. It gives you a different perspective on it.
Experts say it's not unusual for experienced riders to let their guard down when interacting with a familiar animal.
Those are things that are taken for granted, probably more from the quote experienced riders and horse handlers, because they get comfortable around horses and then take those things for granted.
For as bad as it was, Mary knows her injuries could have been much worse if not for a helmet.
I know without a doubt I would have had a head injury of some sort. There's no way to predict that, you know, what it would have been. But with the impact, you know, I was thrown 10 feet. Yeah, I mean, he threw me up in the air, and it was with a lot of force that he got me off. So I know that my head would have been, you know, injured with the way that I hit on my back.
In the United States, around 70,000 reported incidences to hospitals with horse-related incidences. It's not necessarily head injuries. Head injuries account for about 17% of that. That combined with the fact that if you consider what you're doing, you're sitting sometimes 8, 9 feet in the air when you're riding a horse. It's known that it only takes about 4 to 6 miles an hour and a fall from 2 feet to crush the skull. When you exacerbate that with a 9-foot elevation, an animal that can run 40 miles an hour, it's pretty easy to see that the need for safety is pretty important with horses.
Cavender stresses that a horse's first instinct isn't to bite or try to injure someone, but they may be nervous in unfamiliar situations. That's why understanding the animal's breeding, body language, and temperament is crucial to having a safe ride. If you choose to wear a helmet, studies say that decision could pay off if you're put in a dangerous situation.
Okay.
The United States Pony Club actually has data that they reduced the incidence of serious head-related injuries by about 50% just from requiring the use of wearing a helmet or the use of helmets. Obviously, the helmet's going to do two things. It's going to prevent the sheer force or crushing force of a fall, and it's also going to cushion the energy or absorb the energy that's created from that fall.
For Mary, protecting her head has been a self-imposed requirement for years, dating back to her time as a therapeutic riding instructor.
I think it's just like, you know, like I said, it's a seatbelt. You know, it doesn't do a thing for you unless you need it, but when you need it, it's critical.
Besides helmets of different shapes and colors, there are countless precautions that beginning and experienced riders can check off the list before mounting up.
I would say first and foremost, without exception, is making sure your tack's in good working order. And knowing, too, would be knowing your limitation for sure. The limitation of you and the horse. Training horses is not something that happens in a 10-day process. This is a year, 2-year, 3-year, lifetime event.
I do think we all just become a little lackadaisical in our thinking about the horse. I mean, you just can't help to do that. When you ride for so long, it's just kind of like your camera. If you don't know that equipment, then, you know, you're setting yourself up for an accident as well.
Healed and back in the saddle, Mary is determined to make sure she's prepared for the activity she enjoys and the animal she loves.
It's learning about how to interact safely with the horse, and that goes from how you approach them, put a halter on, lead them, turn them out in the pasture, you know, because, you know, in my opinion, most accidents happen because, you know, we're not observing safety things. Horses are not typically mean creatures. They're really not, and they've been, you know, instrumental to the human for years and years with their loyalty and their dedication.
And we do want to make it clear the horse in that story was not the one that was involved in Mary's accident. She tells me that horse was given to Mississippi State University to be used in research projects.
And Dr. Cavender also offered some more tips to watch in case you're thinking about riding. He says friendly horses have their ears forward and are calm with a bright expression. And a horse that swishes or pins its tail, well, that means it may not be comfortable enough to let you ride.
Definitely very good tips. So be careful, safe riding, everybody. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show, but Leighton, we say it every week to tune in next week, but this week you got to tune in for it. Very special show. We're heading outside the studio and going on the road to Jackson, Mississippi's capital.
That's right. Yes, Troy's exactly right. This show will focus on Jackson's role in the ag industry, so get ready for the show.
That's right. We're going to have an interview with Mississippi Farm Bureau President Mike McCormick. He'll talk all about the things Farm Bureau is doing to make sure farmers remain successful in an ever-changing industry.
And we'll also head to the Mississippi Ag and Forestry Museum. There's so many exhibits there and so much happening every single day. Farm Week's Amy Myers gets an exclusive tour from the museum director.
And you also sat down with Bill Pygott, didn't you, Leighton?
I certainly did. He's a member of the Mississippi House of Representatives and chair of the House Agriculture Committee. We'll talk with him about some of the things he's working on at the Capitol and what he and his colleagues are doing for folks working on farms and in the ag industry.
Yes, it's going to be a really fun show, so make sure you tune in for that. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Troy Molen.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Remember, if you miss a story, you can find past episodes of Farm Week under the Shows tab on our website, extension.msstate.edu.
And we've always got you covered on social media, posting all the time on Facebook and Twitter, so join in on the conversation there. We'll see you next week.